This upcoming weather pattern has the potential to produce a ton of snow over the next 10 days. If we take a look at the overall season to date snowfall anomaly since October 1st, much of the Intermountain West has been crushed, and the mountain ranges, especially those in Colorado. I know even one spot picked up 100 inches of snow already, but also the lake effect snow has been really prevalent this time of year, and I think that's actually going to continue. We've seen some record amounts of snow already around the lakes, and we're going to be adding to those totals, especially around the Erie, Pennsylvania region. I think they're at 56 inches so far to date. And just last year, they only picked up 2 feet. So they're already well surpassed their yearly total just from last year and their record total season to date already. So, yes, they definitely have the potential to produce a ton of snowfall this upcoming season, but it just brutally cold this morning, especially if you live up there in Minnesota and Wisconsin, much of the Great Lakes into the Ohio Valley. These are wind chills, folks. I mean, yes, that's not a misprint. That is 40 below zero feels like. That's frostbite territory in about 10 to 15 minutes, folks. That is dangerously cold as the winds are just whipping, and some of the highs aren't going to get even above zero this afternoon in much of the Dakotas and Minnesota. But you can see 15 below feels like in Chicago, so you're definitely feeling the brunt of the Arctic air mass and that cross polar flow that's just been kind of relentless. And I think it's going to subside a little bit, because right now this morning, what we're looking at, again, we're kind of seeing a sharp gradient for much of the southern regions, and the western regions have been above average for December standards. But the cross polar flow has just been alive pretty much all the month of December. I think it is going to start relaxing just a little bit, but it definitely comes back with a vengeance as we head into late next week. So if we take a look at the overall winter storm impacts over the next 3 days, looks like this. We've had relentless systems that's come off the west coast, especially along the coastal regions in Washington and Oregon and northern California, been getting crushed with heavy rain. And so that just means very heavy snow on the mountain ranges. Yes, they could be picking up more feet of snow in some of the Sierras, not out of the question. And then further off into the lake regions, in fact, we've had 3 significant lake effect snow events over the last 3 weeks, and yet we're going to have another one come in over the coming days across portions of Michigan, those areas across areas of Pennsylvania into New York. In fact, they've got a couple counties already under state of emergencies, with just another snow band going to be adding to those 1 to 2 foot, even more totals over the next couple of days, with more heavy lake effect snow. I mean, this is your cross polar flow. You got the Arctic eye coming down from Canada, parked over much of the north central US. And you can see the blue line, the sharp gradient of the much colder air and the much warmer air. So you basically have a fight going on. You've got the southern branch of the jet stream further south. You've got the northern branch of the jet stream further north with the polar jet. You've got the systems coming off the west coast, bringing rain across the interior and around the coastal regions, and then the heavy snow into the upper elevations. But we're going to be seeing a fight, because eventually this southern branch of the jet stream is going to win and start overtaking some of that Arctic air. And when it does, we could produce an overrunning type setup as moisture comes back into play as we head into Friday night into Saturday morning. So those temperatures are going to surge big time with that south wind kicking in Texas and Oklahoma. You could see your overnight lows surge up to 20 degrees above average. But that sharp gradient is going to run into that Arctic air mass, especially as you head towards Nebraska and getting into Iowa. And that could set the stage for an icy setup by the time we head into Friday night into Saturday morning, as an overrunning type setup starts to kind of take over, with the freeze line displaying across this region with the red line here. You got the rain to the south, the transition to the ice, and then the transition to the snow back in the picture for those areas into Minnesota. So don't let your guard down, because yes, this could be looking at a trace to a tenth of an inch of ice. Now we're not talking a major ice storm or anything like that, but sometimes this could even be more dangerous than a major ice storm because you kind of let your guard down, right? You're only looking for possibly a trace to a tenth of an inch of ice, but you can't drive in that stuff. And typically you're driving a lot faster than you need to with those conditions. And especially for your truck drivers out there, you need to be on high alert. We're talking Friday night into Saturday morning for those areas into eastern Nebraska, much of Iowa, and then eventually as that warm front surges from the south, lifts north, that's going to be starting to sneak in the southern portions of Minnesota. So we're talking Friday night into Saturday morning, and then throughout the day lifting further north, eventually by the time we head into Saturday night, getting into those southern portions of Minnesota. So this is what it looks like as we start to see more of the southern jets start to take over the next couple of days. We'll see the polar jets trying to hang on with those colder anomalies for much of the Great Lakes and into the Ohio Valley, much of the Mid-Atlantic, into the Northeast. Kind of a glancing retreating shot of cooler air for those areas into the southeast as much as into Florida, but the warmer anomalies come back with a vengeance for those areas across the southern branch of the jet stream, especially into the south central plains. You're really going to feel it, and it's going to be a lot milder, especially as we head into this weekend. But that's not going to last because, yes, we have another surge. If we take a look, by the time we head into that 18th, 19th time frame of December, yes, that polar vortex starts to stretch out again, and we're going to start to see another polar lobe of energy diving south from Canada, and that's going to drop into a lot of the same areas that has seen the colder air so far in the month of December. And this could set the stage for a snowy type pattern really starting to take shape. So because of course you got the ridge continuing out west, but then by the time we head into that 18th, 19th, especially the 20th time frame of December, that colder shot of air comes back from Canada and dumps into the lower 48, bringing those colder anomalies well back into the picture and dropping all the way down into the deep south again, into the southeast and those areas into the northeast, and could set up a snowy setup because we're going to have a good amount of precipitation along this corridor with the polar jet. So you got the southern branch of the jet stream more or less on the dry side. You got the northern branch of the jet stream on the wetter side, and that's going to mix with that polar air, that Arctic air coming down, and that could set the stage along this green air corridor for some abundance amount of snow dropping. And then we could be setting up a fairly significant low pressure center by the time we go into that 20th time frame of December. Here's the latest GFS. We've got a low pressure center starting to develop off the northeast coast with snow coming in on the backside. So that cross polar flow is coming back alive and well by the time we head back into the 20th with that stretching of the polar vortex coming southbound. So the heavy snow comes back in the picture for Wisconsin, Illinois, back into Indiana, as well as into Michigan, Ohio, those areas across the mid-Atlantic into the northeast. We'll be watching the development area of a low pressure center forming off the northeast coast. Here's the European by the time we head into the 21st, and I'm looking at most of the global models starting to come together on the European, the GFS, as well as the Canadian. All three paint a picture of the potential of fairly significant winter storms starting to take shape across that time frame. We're talking about the 20th, 21st, 22nd time frame of December, with a low pressure center hanging off the east coast with snow and colder air coming on the backside. So this could be setting the stage for a fairly significant winter storm during that time frame, because the cross polar flow is going to be alive and well. We've got abundance of moisture to be working with in that area as that low pressure hangs offshore. And of course, it depends on the speed of that low pressure. Any type of slowness and any type of slowing down of that low will obviously enhance the snowfall totals inland. So we'll be watching that time frame very closely between the 20th, 21st, and 22nd time frame. And the further as we get towards Christmas, I think that polar jet just buckles even further south. So that could actually bring the snow line further south for those possible into Kentucky, getting into Tennessee, possibly back in even into the Carolinas. Could have the potential to start seeing some snow by the time we head into that time frame. But definitely the colder air is going to be coming back with a vengeance, and we'll have another system coming off the West Coast, bringing more heavy rains for those areas along the West Coast and into Northern California. Of course, more heavy snow for those mountain ranges. But there's the colder air coming back with the vengeance. We'll still have the West on the above average side. I don't think that's going away. But yes, those areas across the eastern 2/3 of the U.S. should start to feel the effects of that Arctic air and that stretching of the polar vortex that's coming southbound. And that could set the stage for more colder anomalies all the way down into the deep south, especially into the southeast and much of the Carolinas again, and yes, even to Florida. In fact, the Weather Prediction Center is already highlighting a slight risk for well below average temperature anomalies during that time frame of the 22nd and the 23rd, all the way down into the deep south for Louisiana, Mississippi, getting into Alabama, into Georgia, and yes, those areas into Florida again as those temperatures start to take a tumble. But yes, by the time we head in between that 20th and 25th time frame, so we've got the cross polar flow setting up this morning, we'll start to get a little bit of retreat between now and the 18th. But once the 18th comes back into play, we'll see another polar lobe coming southbound with that stretching of the polar vortex, and that'll send another wave of energy, another cold wave coming southbound between the 20th and leading up to that Christmas time frame. So much of the eastern 2/3 of the U.S. should feel the effects of that Arctic air and those colder anomalies, and that would likely dip all the way down into the deep south. The central U.S. gets more of a glancing shot of that colder air like we've seen, and much of the West will remain on the warmer side between now and through Christmas. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update. Why I protect you before and after the storm.